Welcome back to I'm Still Here. I'm Larry.
And I'm Heather. In 1998, at the age of 26, I was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer. It changed everything for us, but I'm still here.
And we are continuing the 5 to Thrive series. We are in the last third.
Woo!
We are now into post-treatment. Why don't you talk about what we've covered?
We started out by talking about kind of that really scary time of being diagnosed and figuring out what the plan is. So kind of that diagnosis to treatment. And we went through 5 aspects, which we've kind of identified as key components or things to think about regardless of where you are in cancer, right? So mental, physical, nutrition, medical, and support. We talked about that in that time period. And then we just finished doing the 5 to Thrive while you're in treatment. Kind of those big things, maybe having surgery, doing a chemo, radiation, things like that. So now, today, we are going into post-treatment, which is, or it's sometimes called, a lot of times it would be called maintenance also. So, which has its own challenges. But before we jump in, I just want to talk about, so we're going to do this for the next 5 weeks, 5 Wednesdays. That's going to take us through October. And then we are going to kind of pivot a little bit and start sort of a 25-year celebration. I will be coming up on 25 years of living with metastatic breast cancer in December. So I think we're going to have some guests on. We're going to do some highlights and kind of go back to, just talk to some people about all of the things that just the people that have impacted us over the years and how cancer has played a role in that. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah.
But I'm also really excited to talk about this post-treatment / maintenance phase.
Yep.
Because I do feel like this is it's kind of like, oh, you ring the bell. Some people ring the bell, which again, that has a connotation in the metastatic world that's not great sometimes because we're not ever going to be bell ringers, right? Mm-hmm. But it's kind of like, all right, we'll see you later. And you go
right back to a similar anxiety that you had pre-treatment.
Yeah.
And obviously there's a big difference between being 1 year post-treatment, 2 years post-treatment, compared to 10. There is just a way different mental, when we deal with today, obviously we are going to talk about the mental.
That's right.
But so understand we have to try to encapsulate whether it's 6 months or whether it's 20 years into this mental, and that's challenging to do in a fairly short period of time, but we're going to give it a shot. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I will say, I don't know that this is something that gets easier with time. I think it does. But I think like with anything in life, it's not linear. You don't always go, oh, this is getting better, it's getting better, it's getting better. Sometimes you go, oh, crud.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's more forgetting about it more times than previous, right?
Yeah.
Like your just general life takes over, and you go, every now and then you go, oh shit, yeah, or something to that extent. I don't know. I'm just from.
No, that's true. I remember being in the thick of it and thinking there will never be a day that I do not think about cancer. And when I say that, I really feel like I meant that I'm not focused on cancer.
Yeah. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And there still isn't a day that cancer doesn't come up, right? In some respect, but it's not. It doesn't terrify me or set me back or change the course of my day like it would.
Like it did.
Yeah.
Yes.
So just I want you to know this can be a really scary, challenging time to have a doctor or your team say, okay, we'll see you in 3 months or 6 months or whatever your schedule is. Here, it feels like you're kind of being thrown into the abyss, right?
I can imagine. Yeah.
The other thing that comes with that, I think, is, at least for me, because of like the treatments that I had done, I had used those treatments to kind of bolster my thought of well, this is what I'm doing to kill cancer, right? So the radiation's killing cancer, the chemo's killing the cancer. And then it's like, oh, what's doing it now? Right? So you have to really shift your focus to either it's done its job and also, my body is doing what it needs to do. So it is a shift. And it's a lot of mental work. It's a lot of mental work.
Well, and I still believe, this is as big or bigger than the other categories we talk about with the physical nutrition, the medical side of things. I think, if somebody's going to study you, that's where I think they should be studying, is not those other things. They can look up what chemo you got and what radiation, and obviously those played a huge deal in this, and I'm not discounting that. But I think compared to the physical things you did and the nutrition things you did, obviously those helped your immune system, and that's ridiculously important. But the brain is more powerful than anything else we don't even understand it, and we feel like we understand science-wise, physiologically wise, we understand the body quite well. But the brain is still, we don't even understand conscious thought. We don't understand that. So to say that we understand why you are still here, I truly believe, because the answer is we don't know. And I think in turn it lies in the brain, in the mental side, and what you did. And then, so I am really interested, because we have never talked about this. If you can take yourself back to those tests post
like my first scans.
First scans and doctor's appointments, whether it be 3 months, 6 months, a year, if you can remember 5 years, those kind of things. I know your anxiety went back up on those.
Oh, for sure.
But between those, I'm really interested in, what did you do different than in treatment?
I think I really focused on, we'll talk more about the scanning, but initially I was also really focused on, okay, what does it look like now? Like, what does my life look like now? And how can I build the life that I wanted? Like, here this is like an opportunity for me, right? How can I build this life and feel like I am giving myself what I need, and am able to enjoy and focus on the things that really matter. And so, like, I will say, initially with all of this, a lot of people would say, like, oh, you can get back to normal. And I was like, normal's what got me here. That was one thought, right? Like, that clearly didn't work out too well. And also, I just felt like I didn't come through all of this, and my whole, everything about me feels different right now. So I don't want to go back to normal. Like, it would be like shoving, the musical toys that you would, like, shove them in, and then you'd close the lid, and then you'd wind it, and they'd jack in the box, right? Like, that would be like making me shove myself back in, So it was really a lot of consideration of what is the best part, what are the things in my life prior to cancer that I definitely want to bring forward, and how do I live with cancer in a way that feels okay to me, knowing I'm still scared. I'm scared out of my mind right now, How do I keep moving forward and building something that feels right to me?
But from a mental, we had a sign on our mirror for a long time. That said, every day you're killing cancer, right? And then that sign went away. So from that, it was every day. I don't want to say every minute of every day, but you were pretty darn focused on killing cancer. And you tried everything that I do in this day is going to be about making memories or killing cancer. You were just, and that waned. Can you speak to that?
Well, I think there's a little bit of fatigue with that. Like, you can only maintain it for so long. But two, you also gain confidence a little bit, you know? And I decided, I mean, there was some thought of, okay, what really fits into my life? Like, this smoothie really fits into my life. I'm going to keep going with this. This makes me, again, big bang for my buck, right? Kind of thing. What are the things that I feel good about? And also, we'll talk about this more with the physical, but I jumped right into, like, really working out. And again, that's such a it bolstered my mental, you know, it felt like a replacement in some ways of, I don't need to go get a treatment. I'm doing this for my body sort of thing. So I think it's the process of just figuring out what it looks like. And it wasn't comfortable and it was hard. I remember, like, and also, like, because I wasn't working anymore. It was kind of like, what's my purpose? All of this kind of stuff, you know, what am I here for? How do I figure out?
I remember it was a challenge for you, was, and you kind of went through this in it, but I mean, do I go all in on being Heather the cancer person?
Yeah.
Or do I want to have a separate life from cancer?
Yeah. And
the challenge with that, and it has ebbed and flowed.
Yeah.
In the last 24 years, it's ebbed and flowed.
Yeah. I've had the time to be able to really go in and out of those things. And I mean, you've been amazing in terms of, you know, do what works for you. Right. And, so there has been a lot of that, right? Like, I've not worked at all. I was on disability for a long time. And then I was like, nope, I think for me, the right thing is to go back, you know, to work, you know? So what I've learned through some of this is, like, nothing is forever, right? There's very few things in life that you can't just pivot somehow, right? And again, we just talked about things not being linear, but Sheryl Sandberg, who, you know, Google, she's whatever, super powerful woman, but she talks about, like, your career not being a ladder, but being a jungle gym. And I just think that's true. And that's kind of like life with cancer too. Like, it's not necessarily one step up and two steps back. Sometimes it's a step over and down again and then back up and around, you know. But it's the feeling like I've always felt like I'm grateful for the fact that I am able to make these decisions, that my life doesn't have to be focused 100% on cancer, you know? And I think that has kind of sent me on a path that has been helpful. But it doesn't mean I know what I'm doing, right? Like, I know I'm going to get ready to pivot here again in another, you know, within the next year or so, I think. And that's okay.
Yep.
You know? It's just really taking the best of what was before and the things you've learned and trying to figure out how to incorporate them. And it's still dealing with the fear that comes with, you know, changes in scans, stuff like that. And I will say, I should maybe talk about this. I just was talking about it last week on the retreat. Like, when I was diagnosed, when I was, you know, left, my maintenance was tamoxifen, right? And so I was on tamoxifen, I don't know for how long, probably, you know, over a year, I think. And then we scanned, and there was a tiny bit of progression, and so we changed drugs. That's very typical with people with metastatic disease, you know. Changed drugs to Arimidex. Again, I don't know if these drugs are used anymore. Please don't go asking for my drugs. Then a little bit later, again, had the same type of situation, which when you had a scan that shows a little progression, your body remembers how that feels, your brain remembers how that feels, right? And then so we had another one where same thing happened, and I started on Foslodex from that. So And from that, I've been on Fossil-Dex since 2004. Like that's been like a really great medicine for me. But what I'm trying to say with that is like the mental part of that is every time, you have a little progression, then you got to pick yourself back up again, and figure out how to go forward and figure out how to, deal with whatever the next drug is and things like that. But also you have to go, you know what? They just we haven't found the right combo yet. It's a mental game too.
So do you feel like, for lack of better words, just staying positive, do you think that plays a part in this?
I don't know.
With all of the curveballs that get thrown at you as a metastatic
I don't know if it's staying positive as much as it's refusing to say or believe that I was going to die. I would not let that in the door. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I was not...
No, I don't.
But I just was not... I meet and talk to people, and it's almost like they're just buying time, and I wasn't buying time.
Mm-hmm.
You were
on offense?
I was I was living with it, I guess, but it wasn't. I don't know what the right. I don't know what the words are for that, but I refuse to think about those statistics. I know what they are. I am not going to focus on them. And even those statistics, if I am going to think about them, they do not define me. Right. Like we're individuals, and we can,
So how do you do that? That's the question that people want to know. It's one thing to say it, but that doesn't define me. How? We're humans. You're a freak, I know, but the rest of us would like to know how this is done.
It's that little bit of belief. It's my Christian roots of the faith of a mustard seed. Have you ever seen a mustard seed?
They're tiny.
They are tiny.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, it just takes this. It just takes this to believe. If I can believe that, and then maybe I can grow it a little bit more, that I can believe and I can build on my successes and I can keep going from there. And I know I know I am what I think. I know I am what I think. So I am going to think in a way that is not going to be detrimental to me. I can be scared, but I can also come back to that mustard seed. That what if, maybe you're telling me I have, a chance kind of thing.
But, and that's, I get that part. Mm-hmm. But the parts that you actually the things you actually physically did mm-hmm. that made, that I would say I would put into this mental category. Mm-hmm. It was the whole sports analogy, and that's where I always go. But mm-hmm. you rarely played defense. You rarely just and catching things, and that's what happened to me, and this is what's that. You turned it around and said, I'm going to do this. And by doing this, you mentally either just thought, or it gave you, like, I'm going to go for a walk. And that gave you the mental standpoint from that point that I am killing cancer. Even outside of it, even in the post treatment.
Yeah. This is the thing with
it was offense right. for you all the time.
I think a lot of times people will say, I'm going to go for a walk. And then they'll go for a walk. And maybe they'll come back and they'll go, oh, I could have walked faster, or I could have walked farther. I didn't do that. Like, I'm like, good for me. I did that walk. That walk kills cancer. Right? Mm-hmm. Like, I'm not going to...
But I'm saying you were always the one... You were doing something.
Well, because I think those things, they go together, right? That's like me getting... That's like, I don't like to clean. If I can get up and start cleaning for 5 minutes, I can clean for an hour. It's that kind of... your body follows your brain and your brain follows your body, like kind of thing. So
but I think this is getting to the part that people really want to know about you.
Okay.
And about, it's one thing. Well, I was just positive. Well,
no, I don't think I was. I wasn't always positive. And
right. You did things to get you to the positive part. You were on offense. You didn't just sit back and go, and catch these things that were coming at you.
Right.
We all have to catch them.
Right.
But it's what you do with that. And I think that's what, if I could put it together in this, it's the acts that you did, whether it was meditation, a walk, eating a smoothie, or it was the acts that you did that put your mental state in the right state.
Because all of those acts that I did, I chose to think about them in a way. I chose to kind of acknowledge that those were good. Those were good for me.
Yes.
And when when I was doing things that weren't good for me, I would be like, okay, that's fine. Tomorrow's a new day. You know what I mean? I would I'm not going to beat the crap out of myself on top of a choice that I wasn't, say proud of or whatever. I knew wasn't the greatest for me. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to give those more. I felt like it was like fuel, right? I'm not going to give it more fuel.
Yeah.
I'm going to give fuel.
You don't like playing defense.
To the thing. I was really a great defensive volleyball. Not great, but I played defense in volleyball all the time. Mm-hmm. Maybe I'd been beat up so much in high school that I just was tired of it. It is about, for me, it was always about how can I think about this? How am I going to frame this? I can frame this differently. And
that's where I think in turn your body followed.
Yeah.
Your immune system followed.
Yeah.
The effectiveness of the drugs followed because of your brain and the power that our brain has over our immune system, over our central nervous system. That's what I think the difference is.
Okay. Mic drop.
We don't need any more of these.
Yeah,
I honestly do. I do.
Okay.
And I wouldn't have said I knew that prior to doing this 5 to Thrive series, but hearing all of this from you, it just always comes back to, I think your brain was the difference. Not your brain, what your brain was doing. And you putting all those things in place. Anyway, let's get back to this a little bit more. This.
So, again, yeah. So with all of this, you're building your new normal, I feel like. And it might look like a lot of things. And honestly, it can be big steps and little steps and all sorts of steps.
But there needs to be a new normal.
But I do think it's important, I'm not one to look backwards a whole heaping lot. Mm-hmm. So I'm not going to grieve what used to be. You got to move forward. And I think
we're both that way.
As humans, I think we all do better if we just accept the things we cannot change and keep going, trying to recreate something that's not going to be. So we've talked a lot about change and talked a lot about it with, our kids and things like that. And I feel really strongly that change is it is a part of life, and you can either be the one initiating it or be the one, again, offense versus defense, right? Mm-hmm. It's important. And then I think the other thing is, which is sort of similar to that in terms of changes, my body was a lot different. And it hasn't always been easy, but I just need to say thank you to it. Thank you for, rather than being upset at the things that aren't perfect or great or even the way they used to be, any of that kind of stuff. Jen Hatmaker talks about this in her book, her last book that she wrote. And thank you. Gosh, I'm still here, right? So thank you to my body for...
Again, another one of those things easier said than done. Because there's challenges along the way where you're a human. And, from the mental side of this, you can't help but get in the way when things prior to cancer worked so well or were there, and now all of a sudden they're non-existent or don't work as well. That's hard. Yeah,
it is hard. And I think with some of that, especially because I was so young when I was diagnosed, I didn't even appreciate the fact how well my body worked, right?
Yeah.
Or, you know, from many aspects. So, yeah, that's just being young. and also just, you know.
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, I can barely remember before cancer.
I can't, I know, it's so...
You know, we didn't know each other that long compared to how long we've known each other
No.
in cancer, you know, so...
I know, it's been such a... Yeah. So the other... And then just... It's mentally about setting new goals, you know, just like my first big goal was to see Sydney go to kindergarten, which felt monumental. It was outside the norms of what, you know.
When did you set that?
When I was first diagnosed.
Oh.
So that was even outside of like what, I don't know. It was a lofty goal. Let's say that. And I remember reaching that goal and crying. And I don't cry that often, but I fell apart that day. And you were at work, and I called Christy, and she's like, set a new goal. And it was like, whew.
Okay, just to put everybody, like, where were you in this maintenance phase? How long have you been out of treatment when this happened?
So she was 14 months old when I was diagnosed. I was probably like 3 years in, okay. I bet.
Out
of treatment? Yeah, out of treatment, yep.
Okay.
So
yeah, that's just another example of, I mean, it just doesn't necessarily get easier right away when we're talking about these things. I mean,
well, and
3 years out and you had a breakdown.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, it's just, again, it's like, wow. It was an acknowledgement of the fact that I'd made it, and that was amazing. But, like, you know, what's gonna push me forward, you know? And none of the goals that I've set since then have been as monumental to me as that goal was, right? We've done some monumental things. I mean, we adopted Ty, we've built a house, I've changed careers, I've entered my career, you know, like all of these things. But nothing has felt as monumental as that first goal of watching, you know, her going to kindergarten.
What was your next goal?
I don't remember. That's what I'm saying, is I don't remember. But we've also, I mean, we've seen 2 kids graduate and, you know, just really big things. I will say along the way, I've always been mindful and grateful to being able to sit at a school program or at a track meet.
Most of the programs. Let's be honest.
And yes, and I will say also, it is fine to say that you won't miss that. Science fair projects, won't miss.
Ooh, I like those. Oh.
You didn't have to make the last cake with the atom.
Yeah, I did all the other ones. Jiminy Christmas.
I mean, really cold track meets. No, won't miss. Oh my gosh, so cold. I think one of them wasn't even for our it was for our foreign exchange student. We were out there freezing. Anyway, I think it's about, you know, moving forward, not lamenting the past, and
staying on offense.
Staying on offense, Mr. Football. Yeah. Whew. Okay. So next week we're going to talk about physical. Then we'll do nutrition, medical, and support. And then we're going to switch gears and have a little fun talking to some people that have been important to us. And before you know it, it's going to be 2024. Crazy.
Yep.
So, all right. Have a good week.
See you guys.